Hi, I'm Mark James. I've been in IT service management circles for over 25 years now. Welcome to my channel. It's all about IT service management. I hope you find it helpful. Please subscribe and hit the bell below. I create new videos on a regular basis all around ITSM. So let's get to it. Today I'm going to be talking about, you guessed it, incident management. Okay, so if we look back to the ITIL 3 world, you may remember that incident management was part of the operations lifecycle. So remember that there was service strategy, service design, service transition, service operations, and all of that was surrounded around that continuous improvement, or CSI. So incident management fell very squarely in that operations part of the life cycle. In the ITIL 4 world, that now falls under something called practices, and specifically the service management practice. So there are three practices. There's general management practices, there's service management practices, and there's technical management practices. So the difference now is around terminology. So it's not so much it's in the operations process, it's more that it's a service management practice. And the purpose, the goal of incident management, it's about minimizing negative impact. So minimizing any impact of incidents and getting it going again. So restoring that normal service operations as soon as possible. Sometimes that could be at odds with problem management practices, for example, but typically incident management is all about resuming service as quickly as possible. And incident management is one of those areas that, from a customer satisfaction, from a perception of your service you're providing, this is a big area. This has a huge amount of impact on your customers, on your users, and their satisfaction. Incidents are usually not good news to individual users or groups of people or organisations as a whole. So ITIL 4 incident management in the ITIL 4 world plays a heavy part in the service value chain. So if you're familiar with the service value chain, it's mainly involved in the engage, in the deliver and support elements of that service value chain. Going back to ITIL 3 and comparing it to ITIL 4 from a definitions perspective, so the ITIL 3 definition of an incident was an unplanned interruption to a service, or, and I'll come back to that word in a moment, or a reduction in the quality of an IT service. Definition within ITIL 4 talks around an unplanned interruption to a service or a reduction in the quality of service. Now, for those astute of you, you'll notice the definition of ITIL 3 has the word reduction in the quality of an IT service, whereas at ITIL 4, that word of IT is missing. It talks about the reduction in the quality of IT service. So that does open up the avenues for enterprise service management. But that or word is really important. So an incident is an unplanned interruption, so it stopped working, or it's a reduction in the quality. So perhaps the performance has decreased, perhaps it's, I don't know, a device is filling up with space, perhaps network capacity is reducing. So it's not down, it's not completely interrupted, it's just the quality has decreased. So that stands for ITIL 3 and ITIL 4. There's two parts, if you like, to an incident. There's an unplanned interruption. The server is down, the network link is down, and clearly that is an interruption. But also quality can mean, okay, well, the server's not down, but it's not performing. There's a problem with it somewhere along the line. Perhaps the network link is not down, but capacity is reduced from X to Y. The other point to mention around ITIL 4 and the incident management practice is around ITIL 4 no longer is quite so prescriptive about the process, and it shifts that emphasis into those 34 practices. So as a reminder, you have the general management practices, service management practices, and the technical practices. It shifts that focus, and it gives organisation freedom, if you like, to tailor their own processes as to how those should operate. And then it's worthy of mention in terms of service level agreements. Incident management, it's not unusual for incidents to be categorised as to different levels. So you may have a P1, a P2, a P3, a P4, perhaps a P5, and then some kind of metrics around those in terms of, hey, when there's a P1, we want it solved in 3 hours. When it's a P2, still important, but maybe it's 6 hours. And P3, 12 hours, P4, 24 hours. Each organisation will be different, but it's not unusual for there to be solid metrics in there. So perhaps there may even be something along the lines of that an incident, 90% of incidents need to be resolved within 3 hours, for example, for a P1. But ITIL 4 refers to incident management as service management practice, key word there, practice, and it describes the activities, the inputs, the outputs, the various roles, and then based on that guidance, organisations will then design a process for themselves that is in line with that particular organisation's requirement. But typically when you look at an incident management process, it's not unusual for it to cover things like the logging of the incident, the categorisation, the prioritisation, the investigation phases, communication. If it's a P1, you may have a bridge, for example, and would be a different process, a major incident management process, but communicating with the users, acknowledging you've received their request, their incident, for example, and then keeping them posted as to what's going on. Resolution, closure, reviews around incidents. These are all incident management steps that you would typically expect to see in an organisation. One of the other terms that's worth mentioning is swarming. So swarming's a term, it's a new term to ITIL incident management and the framework, although to be fair, from an agile perspective, from an agile team, this is not new information. The concept of swarming has been done for years in agile circles, but it's a technique. So incident management swarming, so it's a technique for solving complex tasks. So multiple people, multiple teams will work on a common item, so they'll have different expertise from different areas. Perhaps they're different subject matter experts, different assignment groups, different technical abilities. It's a swarm of people that look at a particular activity, very much collaborative based, as opposed to escalation based, which I'll come on to in a moment. But it's collaborative approach. It's getting all of the people together, if you like, all of that expertise in one area until it becomes clear which competencies are needed. We may need someone from that team or that area or that particular skill set that's the most relevant. From a swarming perspective, think of bees. So a swarm of bees all coming together. So, lots of people coming together, resolver groups, technical expertise, looking at a particular task and then once it's been worked out what's needed, perhaps some of those individuals will return back to some of their other activities. But swarming is a new term to incident management, part of the ITIL 4 framework anyway. The older model, as opposed to collaboration and a swarming type approach, was the escalation, the process of you would have a level 1 team, you would have a level 2 team, and then you'd have like a real kind of technical team, a level 3 team for example, and that was sort of a streaming model where it was escalation based. Level 1 would look at it. If they couldn't get anywhere, it could go to the next level. If there was no joy there, it would go to the next level. But swarming is something new from a ITIL perspective, but from Agile, it's been around for some time. Okay, so incident management doesn't stand on its own. So what do I mean when I say that? There are other interfaces with other service management, technical, general management practices. So incident management just isn't an activity that operates in a silo, if you like. There are other inputs, there are other outputs to the incident management. Event management or monitoring, for example. So perhaps that practice has a tool, and that tool generates an alert of some kind to say, hey, my disk space is now at 50% or at 75%, or you don't really want it to be telling you it's at 100%, you want to be proactive. But that alert, perhaps that could automatically generate an incident with your service management tool. Problem management, change enablement, service desk functions, service request management, service continuity, deployment. There's a whole number of interfaces that work with incident management. It doesn't stand on its own. Okay, so that's it. It was just a very quick overview of incident management generally. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell as well. Thank you.